So I want to show you this. The U.S. is seizing yet more oil tankers. This was tweeted out by Secretary Nome. And from Bloomberg, they say U.S. forces seized a Russia-flagged ship in the North Atlantic that's been at the center of dramatic sea chase across the ocean. An aggressive expansion of its blockade of sanctioned vessels going to and from Venezuela. And you heard that correctly, Russia-flagged ship. So I'm not quite sure what we're thinking when we're doing this, other than we're boarding ships claiming that the oil's ours. I think the ship might have had no flag at the start, and then as the U.S. forces got closer, they raised the Russian flag, and they're like, "Hey, let's go and take it." I'm deeply concerned about this stuff, and I think we all should be. This is night vision, so they're not hiding this stuff in terms of this is tweeted out by the government. Let me show you this. This is what Fox News has to say about this stuff. Just have a listen.
The ship, previously known as the Bella One, had been accused of violating American sanctions and shipping Iranian oil. The ship has also transported Venezuelan oil in the past, but is reporting to be empty right now. Photos showing a U.S. Army Little Bird helicopter with a boarding party on the skids have been seen abeam of the tanker. Little Birds are flown by the U.S. military's elite 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers.
So I guess we're using this regiment, as you can see, called the Night Stalkers. If the Fox News thing is correct, we're pretty far from home, guys. And are we seizing ships between Iceland and Ireland, like basically off the coast of the UK? Is that what we're saying here? And I saw the news in this. I also saw supposedly, because you never know for sure on this stuff, but supposedly there was a Russian sub escort. But I guess we had a bunch of military assets in the region. So I really don't know what we're doing here, to be frank. I don't know if there's some sort of deal made, which I'll show you guys in a moment here.
This is the same unit that flew into Venezuela to grab Nicolas Maduro and his wife last weekend as part of the full Pegasus package ordered by President Trump. Now, Russia reportedly deployed a submarine and other vessels to escort the oil tanker. It appears the U.S. military got there first. The sanctioned tanker was recently reflagged to become a Russian vessel. Last month, President Trump ordered a full blockade of sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. And the U.S. Coast Guard had been trying to board the ship last month in the Caribbean when she was heading to Venezuela. The Justice Department issued a warrant to seize that ship over its alleged sanctions violations for transporting oil on behalf of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is classified as a foreign terrorist organization. The tanker then changed course and raced to Europe, with the U.S. Coast Guard cutter in hot pursuit to shadow the tanker. In recent days, the U.S. military sent a boarding team of commandos to Britain for the mission of boarding and taking down the tanker. Previous tracking data showed the sanctioned tanker about 100 miles south of Iceland, likely trying to get to Russia. And now, Dana, U.S. forces are reportedly trying to seize a second oil tanker in the Caribbean, as we've just learned. We are working to confirm that second report, Dana.
Yeah, and I saw in the Wall Street Journal they were talking about a second tanker also. We're getting really aggressive. So I guess the plan from the tanker's point of view is run to Russia, put up Russian flags, and I guess the U.S. plan is, okay, Russian flag. I'll be curious if they change the plan to Chinese flags. Hey, let's run to China. I don't know. I just don't think this is going to end well. I'll leave it at that. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm just showing you what I'm seeing. This stuff is all whacked out. And I feel like they're looking for World War III. I'm being frank with you guys, because now we're talking about multiple countries. This is a senator now. Listen to what he has to say. This is a Republican dude.
So proud of what the president did, and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and everybody, our military, Maria Corina Machado, and what they did in Venezuela is going to change Latin America. This is the start of changing Venezuela. Then we're going to fix Cuba. Nicaragua will get fixed. Next year we'll get a new president in Colombia. We're going to start, the democracy is coming back to this hemisphere.
So democracy is coming back. Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia, I guess we're changing. And are we kidnapping everyone? Is that our plan? And we're chasing ships all the way to Russia. I guess that's our plan. And then, and there's different perspectives you can take on this. Like, are you worried about World War III? Are you worried about, the moral implications? What about cost? I mean, there's so much to talk about with this. This is Rubio on cost. Listen to this.
They're not the same. So what will you
It doesn't cost us. It doesn't cost us.
The involvement, the U.S. involvement in Venezuela, how much will it cost?
Well, it isn't going to cost us any money. For example, this oil deal that's happening doesn't cost us any money. On the contrary, and if it opens up,
costs no money to
well, these look, I can't. I don't have the numbers.
So he doesn't have the numbers, but supposedly it not gonna cost us anything. And I just look at the expressions on Pete Hegseth's face. That tells you all you need to know. He's like got that shifty eye action. I mean, I'm serious. You gotta watch how these people talk. Then there's this, and who knows what to make of this stuff. That's why I'm just showing you everything that I see, because there's a lot of things I think is going on behind the scenes that may or may not be shady. I mean, there's a lot of things that are shady, but I'll just read it. It says, Trump's former Russia advisor says Russia offered U.S. free reign in Venezuela in exchange for Ukraine. Now, this was actually from before. I just want to make that clear, but this is the story that's printed now. And I'll read a bit what it says, because you're probably kind of curious. I'm curious myself. Even though Russia officials never made a formal offer, Moscow's then ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, hinted many times to her that Russia was willing to allow the United States to act as it wished in Venezuela if the U.S. did the same for Russia in Europe. And this is, again, coming from Hill. Quote, before there was a hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, how about doing a deal? But nobody in the U.S. was interested then. And this, I guess, is going back from before. So she would know this stuff. Again, this person says Trump's former Russia advisor is saying these things, Dr. Hill. I don't know, other than the whole like Russia sub thing and run into Russia, but then is there some sort of deal made, or I really don't know. I'm just showing you guys what I see. This is then, are we sending troops to Venezuela? Karen Levitt had a press conference. We'll watch what she has to say.
In order to get these oil companies to invest billions in Venezuela, how will the U.S. reassure that their workers will be safe in Venezuela? Could there be troops involved?
At this point in time, as you know, there are no troops on the ground in Venezuela. The president, of course, reserves the right to use the United States military if necessary. It's not something he wants to do. Diplomacy is always the first option, as you saw. He tried that with Nicolas Maduro, but unfortunately, he was an illegitimate dictator and an unserious person. And so President Trump authorized this law enforcement operation, and now Nicolas Maduro is sitting in a prison cell in New York. So certainly the president is going to do what's in the best interests of the American people, and that includes workers from our energy and oil industry as well.
Meeting tomorrow, with that meeting.
I mean, isn't it clear? It's all about the oil. I mean, there's a lot of things you could talk about, but the argument they're going to make is, if the oil companies are going to go, we'll send troops. But what about Congress? I mean, the president doesn't have the power for this stuff. Like, all this stuff is so shady, illegal. I don't know how you want to say it. And that's why I'm going through this stuff with you. The justification the U.S. is going to try to say is like, oh, well, we have rulings in our courts, so therefore we can do whatever we want. And they're going to try to call this a law enforcement action. That's sort of their strategy. But how does that hold up when we're like in international waters off the coast of the UK? I mean, you consider off the coast of Iceland. And then how do we justify this to, putting in troops to protect the oil? I mean, when you ask these people questions, this is Mike Johnson. Listen to what he has to say.
Just to follow up, because you say that there's military action is not going to happen. So then, is it responsible for the White House to continue to raise the specter of military action? They said very explicitly.
I've spoken to the question. I'm not gonna take 1,000 gotcha questions this morning trying to pit me against the White House.
And that's a common thing that he'll be like, oh well, I didn't hear that. And I guess the new one, he's like, well, I'm not gonna take that question. It's who these people are. I know it's frustrating to go through this nonsense together, but just know that you're not alone. I can see these people are absolutely corrupt. What we need to do is get the MAGA people on board as well. But even if not, 2/3 of the country should be enough to remove these people. I mean, isn't it obvious what's going on is just a complete disaster?
I had a story yesterday on the vice president, and it questioned his, quote, notable absence on Venezuela. And the sub-headline asked, was the vice president's exclusion from the operation in Venezuela an expression of his anti-interventionist ideology or political calculation? Would you be able to discuss the Vice President's role in Venezuela policy?
I did see that report in the New Yorker, and quite frankly, I laughed out loud because it's very clear it's a fake report that's trying to sow distrust and division amongst the president and his team. Let me just be very clear. The Vice President has been involved in all policy. He is the right-hand man of the president on all policy matters, including Venezuela policy. He was, of course, read in and deeply involved in this operation from the very beginning. And he was present on the night of the operation via secure communication at a different location as to not damage the operational secrecy of this mission. That was so incredibly important to ensure that this mission could be carried out.
Okay, so pay attention to the way that she talks. They're talking about secrecy and things like that, because this comes up later to why they don't tell Congress or other people what they're doing. Oh, well, it's just, for our security, why you don't need to know. That's kind of what they're going for. When she's like, oh, that's a fake report, laughing out loudly, regarding, J.D. Vance. I would take these people what they say with a grain of salt. Let's leave it at that. I'm sure you guys know this, but I'll let you guys make up your own mind. You see what they say. You see their defenses. Now we're talking about what are you going to do with the money, basically.
30 to 50 million barrels of oil. How exactly is that going to work? You're getting it out of Venezuela into the United States?
Yes.
And then what?
That's exactly right. So as you know, Ed, as the president announced last night, this was the sanctioned oil that was basically just sitting in barrels, sitting on ships because of the effective quarantine of the United States of America. And the interim authorities have agreed to release that oil to the United States, so it will be arriving here at home very soon. The United States government has already begun marketing Venezuelan crude oil in the global marketplace for the benefit of the United States, engaged the world's leading commodity marketers, key banks to execute and provide financial support for these crude oil and crude product sales. All proceeds from the sale of Venezuelan crude oil and products will first settle in U.S.-controlled accounts at globally recognized banks to guarantee the legitimacy and integrity of the ultimate distribution of proceeds, and those funds will be dispersed for the benefit of the American people and the Venezuelan people at the discretion of the United States government.
When Trump tweeted out this stuff before, he was like, the money's going to be controlled by me. And then the phrase that they're using is U.S.-controlled accounts at globally recognized banks. Okay. And I think there's a lot of criticisms. The big criticism is like, just, if you told the regular person why we're doing this stuff, why we're spending tax dollars, why we're, risking war, maybe, seizing Russian tankers if they're flying Russian flag, and that's a whole other discussion. Whose tanker is the thing? Where to even begin? I'm speechless, and it's befuddled because it's hard to. There's so much every day that they're throwing at us. Military troops, who controls the money, why are we going after said tankers? And then you can go on the story of like, because what Fox and they all try to do is like, oh, well, look how great our Night Stalker military are trained. We got the best military in the world. And they'll spend a lot of time on that. They'll try to get you focused on that. I mean, I just tried to focus on like follow the money stuff. And already you're like, okay, how many counts are there, right? There's a bunch of questions with that. Like every day it brings up yet more questions that we all should be asking. It's so much. Then Rubio then had to give a briefing to other senators in Congress. It sounds pretty sketchy to me. Listen to see what he says here, because people were basically accusing him of winging it.
Some senators who were in that briefing describing your operation variously as that you're winging it, that there's no plan for Venezuela going forward.
Yeah, I know. They're going to say that. I used to be a senator too. That's what you always say when it's the other party. The bottom line is we've gone into great detail with them about the planning. We've described it to them. In fact, it's not just winging it. It's not just saying or speculating it's going to happen. It's already happening. Like the oil arrangement that we've made with PDVSA on their sanctioned oil that they can't move. Understand, they are not generating any revenue from their oil right now. They can't move it unless we allow it to move, because we have sanctions, because we're enforcing.
So that's that, dude. Listen to a bit of the Democratic response, because they have some really good points with this to rebuttal. Listen to this.
Yeah, Tim and I made it clear that the public needs answers. Across America, people are just saying, what the hell is going on? We need answers as to how long this is going to last. We need answers to how many troops, how much money, are there guardrails, things we don't do. And a number of things that we talked about were very troubling.
And that's the first questions that I have, like literally, guys. I go through the news and like the number one question in my mind, and I look at the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, all the recent reports, and they'll say like oil tankers taken, there's Russian subs there, but then there's always like really hazy on why are we doing the thing, like do we have any justification for said things, and they say, literally, and then we're saying the same thing, like how much does this cost? Have you made the case to the American people that this is what we should be doing?
There's I am totally dissatisfied about their answers of going into other countries, totally dissatisfied of what they might be doing in Greenland, as well as in Colombia, Mexico, and other countries. And we're also totally dissatisfied about succession. They're relying to help them run Venezuela, help Trump run Venezuela, of the most unreliable, corrupt people who hate America. So this is fraught with peril. The American people, the public, not just in a classified room, the American people need answers. Tim.
I want to hear what Tim says in a minute here, but I actually have a professor who's an expert in the field of Latin American and in fact, like military stuff. And he was saying, let's just talk about Venezuela by itself. He was saying that there are thousands of people or soldiers, I think with the phrase he used, I think he used the word soldier and militia, that are still loyal to Maduro. And this idea that we could just go in and take the oil and secure our people is just nuts. And someone actually in our comments wrote, and I thought it was a really good comment, talking about the landscape of Venezuela. Like, think about the mountains of Afghanistan plus like jungles, say in Vietnam, just for example, just the landscape with mountains and harsh terrain essentially. I mean, you're looking at guerrilla warfare for a long time, and I appreciate all of our discussion about this. Like, we have a lot of people in our community that raise points that I hadn't even thought about. And then, like I mentioned, my professor, who's an expert in that field of Latin America and military affairs, and in fact, he writes books on military coups in Latin America. Like, he really knows this stuff. I mean, he's just like, don't touch it, right? And that's the problem, that the Republicans will drag you into this stuff of like, oh, well, everyone needs to be free. We need to spread democracy. And it's just like, it's the arrogance thinking that the only way that you can, help other people in other countries is by pointing a gun at them or bringing the tanks and dropping bombs. I mean, it's a ludicrous notion.
We've got the two cabinet secretaries here, and they heard what I said in that room. We are 4 months into a sustained military operation. More than 200, quote, enemies have been killed. American troops have been injured. We have the U.S. forces arrayed around Venezuela, but neither the House nor the Senate have been willing to hold a single public hearing to put these facts before the public. Why not?
And all this stuff right there, like my first reaction, just as an American citizen here, is in any normal country, Trump and his people would have been impeached long ago. Like Tim's like, yo, we've been doing this for 4 months. That's how crazy this stuff is. That has gotten to this point, right? Now that we're seizing tankers like way, way, way from the home territory, right? We're over to Europe basically at this point doing this stuff. And I think there should be. I mean, I don't think I'm just going on a limb here, but there should be that your MAGA Republicans are going to be with us here. I think on this one, because they're kind of like, hey, let's not get involved in foreign wars. I mean, what are we doing? And I'm just talking about the tanker thing today, let alone the kidnapping of Maduro.
What they will do is get us in a classified setting where the leader of the Senate says, this is not for public consumption. And so the questions that we have about the legal rationale, we cannot discuss in public. The questions we have about the strategic rationale, we cannot discuss in public. About the targeting criteria, we cannot discuss in public. About what's next, is Greenland next, is Colombia or Mexico or Cuba next, it's very hard to discuss in public. We've got to get this discussion.
Right, so if you understand, basically the Republicans, the way they do it is like, oh, well, it's all classified. We can't let the enemy know, how we run things and stuff like that. And so then they try to pretend that they're doing these, disclosure to Congress and such, but then this is what I'm saying. This is the coming out of it, how they're responding to the information that they're getting. It's just not good enough, right?
Out of the skiff and into the public before it's too late.
The reason we need hearings, public hearings, is the Founding Fathers, when they gave the Congress the power to make war, knew that this is such a powerful and fraught with peril issue, making war, that a public discussion was required. They're avoiding all public discussion. To talk to us in the skiff, where we didn't get adequate answers even to our questions, but not let the American people know what they're doing, when it's the American people who have always paid the price when we try to do this regime change in blood and treasure. We need answers. We need answers to these questions, and we need them made public.
I can't even make jokes about this. It's the seriousness of it, and it's sad because there's so many Americans out there that are just too apathetic. It's the most frustrating thing. I think that for me right now is I know, guys, there's a lot of frustrating things because you say, Chris, why didn't you talk about this, why didn't you talk about that? Yes, I know. Like, I'll bring it up. I mean, we killed, this is from the U.S. perspective. On just the raid was 75 people. And then Tim Kaine was saying like 200 total. I don't even know who these people are. They keep destroying evidence and then they're not disclosing it. I mean, there's that. I'll catch you next video.